As of February 2026, the American corporate boardroom stands at the convergence of two hostile legal fronts. Executives are caught in a pincer movement that has fundamentally altered the calculus of fiduciary duty. From the political right, a sophisticated network of anti-ESG litigation is weaponizing the century-old doctrine of shareholder primacy. Spearheaded by state attorneys general and emboldened by the Fifth Circuit, they aim to dismantle corporate sustainability initiatives. Meanwhile, from the political left, mandatory disclosure regimes in California and the European Union are forcing perilous specificity. These rigorous environmental commitments are creating a fertile ground for greenwashing fraud claims. At the very heart of this modern conflict lies a legal specter from 1919, the case of Dodge versus Ford Motor Company. Taught for decades as a simple lesson in shareholder wealth maximization, it has re-emerged as the North Star for ESG plaintiffs. The core lesson of 2026 is the resurgence of the Ford trap, an immense legal vulnerability for modern executives. This trap snaps shut when a fiduciary explicitly justifies a business decision using a non-pecuniary rationale. Favoring social or moral motives over firm-specific financial logic creates a disastrous opening for derivative litigation. The prevailing media narrative frames this as a culture war, but that is a dangerous distraction for the C-suite. The real war is being fought over the legal definition of pecuniary factors in ERISA and the rejection of systematic stewardship. To survive, we must perform a forensic re-examination of the foundational error of Henry Ford himself. Mainstream history remembers the case as establishing shareholder primacy, but the industrial reality was much more nuanced. Ford was a monopolist attempting to reshape the market, but he failed to articulate the business case for doing so. He accumulated a surplus of $112 million and faced competitive threats from the Dodge brothers. Ford cut special dividends to build the massive River Rouge complex and raise worker pay to $5 a day. This was a rational investment in human capital, designed to buy labor peace and squeeze out competitors. But when the Dodge brothers sued, claiming Ford was running a charity, Ford took the witness stand and blundered. Instead of defending his ruthless profit maximization, he testified with messianic zeal about benefiting society. By disavowing the primary goal of profit, he stripped himself of the deferential protection courts afford to directors. The court ruled that a business corporation is organized primarily for the profit of the stockholders. In 2026, activist plaintiffs utilized the testimony of modern CEOs to prove they are prioritizing collateral benefits. When a CEO tells the media they are divesting from fossil fuels because it is the right thing to do, the trap springs. They are admitting to a non-pecuniary motive, triggering the Dodge precedent and potential securities fraud. The only robust defense is the pecuniary translation, forcing directors into a narrow fiduciary tunnel. A board must argue they are divesting to avoid stranded asset risk and reduce their cost of capital. But the federal battlefield in 2026 is defined by a chaotic disintegration of administrative consensus. Following the overturning of Chevron deference, power shifted to federal courts, creating a massive circuit split. The Fifth Circuit became an anti-ESG laboratory, hearing aggressive challenges against the Department of Labor. In the landmark ERISA battle, a conservative judge surprisingly upheld a Biden-era ESG rule. He found the rule was textually neutral, merely removing barriers to considering ESG if relevant to risk and return. But fearing this neutrality precedent, the administrative state moved to rescind the very rule it had won. By mooting the appeal, they clear the deck for future administrations to ban ESG factors entirely. For pension fund managers, the regulatory floor has dropped out, exposing them to whack-a-mole enforcement. Meanwhile, the D.C. Circuit is adjudicating the flow of federal green capital itself. The executive branch attempted to freeze disbursements from the $27 billion Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. A split panel vacated a preliminary injunction, but the full D.C. Circuit granted en banc review. If the executive can withhold appropriated funds, it introduces sovereign risk into private project finance. Private lenders layer capital on top of these grants, and revoking them makes the entire stack unbankable. Executives must now treat any undisbursed federal subsidy as contingent revenue in their forecasts. Concurrently, the Delaware Court of Chancery delivered a decisive blow to the universal owner theory. In McRitchie v. Zuckerberg, the court rejected the idea that directors owe duties to diversified external portfolios. A director cannot legally sacrifice firm-specific profit to mitigate risks to the broader economy. The fiduciary wall around the corporate entity has been fortified, rendering systematic stewardship legally impotent. This creates a single firm focus where a decision must exclusively help the specific corporation. State-level litigation only worsens the landscape, presenting a red versus blue compliance nightmare. A disclosure made for California's Scope 3 emissions laws becomes Exhibit A in a Texas boycott investigation. With the SEC climate rules stalled, there is no federal preemption to save companies from this tug-of-war. Fearing backlash, companies are green-hushing, deleting reports to hide in silence. But silence is not a safe harbor. Failing to disclose material climate risks violates regulations. Shareholders are now suing boards for failing to oversee these critical operational risks. And as companies go silent on green initiatives, they pivot to a new hazard, AI washing. Overstating the efficacy of artificial intelligence to boost stock prices simply shifts the locus of fraud allegations. To survive 2026, boards must rigorously discipline their communication using the Ford protocol. Because the trap is triggered by the stated motive, every initiative must be translated into pecuniary terms. Never approve a plan to demonstrate commitment to future generations. You must cite supply chain risks and capital costs. Disavow systematic benefits and explicitly focus on mitigating risk for your specific enterprise. Develop a bifurcated reporting structure, keeping regulatory filings dry, factual, and strictly risk-based. Greenwashing plaintiffs are using artificial intelligence to scrape marketing copy and compare it to emission data. Henry Ford lost because he refused to play the game of shareholder primacy, even when his business depended on it. In 2026, the game has evolved, but the corporation still exists for the profit of the stockholders. Successful boards will pursue sustainability while ruthlessly framing it as cold hard capitalism. They will employ Henry Ford's operational strategy, but exclusively use the language of profit and shareholder rights. The C-suite must navigate this minefield with precision, verify the jurisdiction, quantify the risk, and never confess to altruism.
Subscribe for more insights on the laws that shape business. The law doesn't wait.